Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we've got no let up with wild weather with more severe weather and tornadoes, including big hailstorms as well as an April snowstorm, as we'll break things down for you over the next 7 days. Good morning everyone, this is your Saturday, April the 16th update. Man, we got a lot to talk about. Let's look at the surface map this morning. And man, it's pretty cold air up here to the north. Is checking in at 27 degrees this morning in Minneapolis. There's that boundary with some rain showers out ahead of it into the northeast. They had all that warmer air, but that's going to be transferred into much colder conditions and actually a developing snowstorm as we get into your early work week. But today we're going to be focusing down here further to the south with this little mini boundary, and you can see where the separation is, where the colder air is to the north. That's got all this cold air aloft, and then you got the warm sector. So that's along this boundary. We're gonna have to be looking out for some big hailstorms as we get through the afternoon hours, and that's gonna be setting the stage even for tomorrow, as we got really heavy rain entering portions of California and Northern California back into San Jose here, where they're 57 degrees and very heavy rain falling up there into Northern California. But look at the snow. We're talking more snow into portions of the Cascades and the higher up elevations, like 2,000 to 3,000 feet. In fact, they've got winter weather advisories up there in portions of Oregon here this morning, back into the Sierra. Even more winter weather advisories extended into portions of Idaho as well as Montana. And man, look at the winds. I mean, these winds are still going to be cranking with an active jet stream. And out ahead of it, we still got all those severe thunderstorm watches in place for portions of Oklahoma and Arkansas, and even flash flood watches in place as well, and even a flash flood warning this morning in portions of northern Mississippi, where this whole area is going to be really active. They've seen a lot of big hailstorms the last couple of days, and even some pretty big tornadoes as well. And then up here to the north, where it's going to be cold enough, we do have a freeze warning in place this morning in portions of Indiana and Ohio. So yeah, we've got a lot going on. Let's turn our attention out west first into the Cascades, where more snow is going to be flying. They had that rare snow event in Portland earlier a couple days ago, but man, all that heavier snow comes back in the picture into the Cascades, primarily around 2,000 to 3,000 feet, but you're looking at about a 2 to 8 inch swath today, essentially starting now and all the way through about 9 o'clock this evening, with more snow on the table. And so let's take a look at the overall jet stream and see what's actually happening. So you see this little boundary with that stalled front right here, and it's just kind of oozing and sagging southward, and along that boundary, that's where we're going to be having the severe storms into portions of northeast Texas, getting into portions of eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and portions of western Tennessee here. But to the north, it's just completely the opposite, where that's the cold sector. A 1030 Arctic high pressure continues to funnel down, bringing well below average temperature anomalies. And that is going to be setting the stage for a developing snowstorm as we get into your Monday, Tuesday timeframe, with an active jet off the Pacific Northwest, bringing all that heavier rain. And we actually have a weakening typhoon way out there in China that's going to continue to lift up, go through the Bering Strait, and that's going to continue the flow of moisture for portions along the coast here in the Pacific Northwest, especially as we get into Northern California next week. So we got a lot more rain to talk about for them. So as we expand the view and take a look at the overall setup for today, for Saturday, you can see we got some big hailstorms to contend with into portions of right along basically I-35 eastward into, say, Dallas, into northeast Texas, but especially as you get into portions of northeast Texas, get into southeastern Oklahoma, but especially as you get into Arkansas and northern Louisiana. These could be some big time hail producers. We've seen numerous hail reports yesterday, from quarters to golf balls to tennis ball. There were even some baseball and even isolated softball size hail reports yesterday, with maxing out about 4.5 inches. And then we still actively looking for tornadoes. We had a big tornado last night and we could be looking at some more spin up tornadoes on the table in that same area where they do have that slight risk for severe weather. And then winds, the damaging winds, are also going to be a culprit to contend with later on this afternoon, as right along that boundary continues to remain active. But yeah, this has been certified now. If you were with me for that live coverage back on April the 12th down here in Texas, they had that significant hailstorm down there in the Salado, where they had that verified 165 mile per hour high-end category EF3 tornado. Then on top of that, they had a significant hailstone. At the time, it was 5.5 inches, but it got certified yesterday with that 3D rendering of 5.67 inches. That's actually the fourth biggest hailstone of all time in the state of Texas. And just last year, the state record was actually set at 6.4 inches down there in Hondo, Texas, which is near San Antonio. But look at that hailstone. That was basically the size of somebody's hand. And luckily she was able to grab it out of her front yard, but that thing almost weighed a pound. So that was a significant hailstone that fell down there in Texas. But as you expand the view and look at Sunday, you can see where all the cold air is going to be. So you got these kind of conveyor belts of trough. You bring all that colder air into the Pacific Northwest, all in the northern tier. That's where they've got those winter weather advisories in place. But that's going to be swinging off into the upper Great Lakes and the upper Midwest here, go through portions of the Ohio Valley, hit the mid-Atlantic, as well as into the Northeast as we get into your Monday, Tuesday timeframe. With, yes, an April snowstorm is definitely on the table, but underneath that, we got all the warm sector to contend with. So that sagging boundary, by the time we get into tomorrow on Sunday, really doesn't go anywhere. It just sags maybe just a little bit further off to the south, but more severe weather, I mean, more hatched risk hailstones. That's that golf ball size hail, or potentially greater than that, right along that boundary there into northern Louisiana, central Mississippi, and portions of Alabama here. So definitely be under the gun for those significant hailstones that could be flying into the heated afternoon, into the evening hours. But we could also be looking at an isolated tornado threat as well. So we got more severe weather definitely onto the table for portions of the deep south and the southeast going into your Sunday time frame. But if we expand the view and kind of give you an overall setup for the next 60 hours of where those updrafts could be and where those kind of a bigger hailstones could fly, yeah, it's right along this boundary into Louisiana, into Arkansas, into portions of western Tennessee, going into Mississippi, and that will eventually start to enter into portions of Alabama. But this is the next 60 hours, which you could be looking at some of the most significant updrafts. And that typically is an indication where some of the bigger hailstones could be flying, and down there the deep south into the portions of the southeast over that 60-hour time frame. But to the north, there's that cold sector. So as we go into your Monday, Tuesday time frame, April the 19th, look at all that cold air coming from Canada. With that northwest flow, we got a pretty significant Arctic high pressure. We've got a developing low pressure system off the coastline. This is actually a developing nor'easter for April standards, and that's going to bring some pretty healthy snowfall on its wake. So if we wake up on Monday, April the 18th, look at the temperatures as you wake up, with widespread 30s and freezing temperatures for much of Minnesota and to Iowa, back into Missouri, but going into Illinois, into Indiana, with good 32, 36 degree swath into Ohio, back into West Virginia, going into portions of Pennsylvania here, up here into upstate New York, into Vermont, New Hampshire. So all those areas are going to be under the gun where it's going to be cold enough with that flow from the northwest, where underneath that, we're going to be talking about some snow, and some of these could be some heavier snows at times, extending as we get into your Monday afternoon time frame, going into Wisconsin, going into Michigan there, and right along that boundary in southern Canada, we could be looking at least on the northern side of Ohio, picking up some snow. But especially as you get into Pennsylvania here and say State College and Scranton areas to the north, those heavier snow totals are going to be starting to accumulate in inches for them for April. That's going to be pretty significant as that colder air continues to drain in. And as we get into, say, the overnight hours on Monday, yeah, that we have that developing low pressure system just hanging off the coast, dragging down all that cold air aloft. And that's going to bring some moderate to heavier snows continuing to fly as it pushes up through Pennsylvania, as it goes into upstate New York, and eventually it'll swing into portions of Massachusetts, getting into Vermont, with that moderate to heavier snows continuing to fly going through your Tuesday morning. So it's really basically Monday and Tuesday type setup. But yeah, we could be looking at some pretty healthy totals on the table as this snowstorm tries to wind down as we go into Tuesday morning, but still dumping the heavier snows in its wake into upstate New York. By the time it gets into Vermont, New Hampshire, that will extend into Maine as this low pressure will be swinging up and continuing to lift northeast. And yes, we could be looking at some leftover snow showers on the backside of that system. But look at the Arctic high pressure of 1028, 1029. That's some cold air continuing to drain in off the northwest flow into portions of the Ohio Valley in the northeast. But look at the snow. I mean, this is the latest NAM indicator on the short range convective mesoscale velocity view. And we can look at the setup here for the snow. Look at, got some pretty significant totals as we go into portions of the upper Midwest, going into the upper Great Lakes here, back into portions of Pennsylvania, going into New York, and that will extend into portions of Vermont and New Hampshire, going into Maine here with kind of a bullseye. We could be looking at some State College into Scranton areas, 6, 7, 8 inches. And yeah, even some double-digit totals is probably not out of the question with that pretty significant snowstorm for April standards is going to be on the table. But yeah, there's no let up in sight with the severe weather as we extend into the 20th time frame. We've got, looking at the vorticity, kind of the velocity index, as we look at some of the areas of instability in the upper levels. Underneath that, we could be looking at more storms setting up in the midsection of the country, where we've got that cold air draining from the northwest. We've got much warmer conditions in the middle of the country, and then we got much colder conditions coming off the coast, where we have another developing system that's going to be coming off the Bering Straits, off from Alaska, bringing more heavier rain back into portions of Northern California, getting it off the coastline here as we get deeper into the middle of next week. And I think that's going to be the beginning stages of a more significant severe weather setup as we get into, say, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th time frame, with this more significant trough that's going to be diving in off the Pacific Northwest, really amplifying and digging off the West Coast. By then, that snowstorm will be gone by then, and we'll see all that rapid warm up going to be on the table, trailing behind all that snowfall that's going to be flying for your or earlier in the week. Then you got that rapid warm up coming in off the backside with well above average temperatures for the midsection of the country. That will extend into the Ohio Valley, into the northeast, with more colder air continuing to drain off the west coast. And underneath that, with that 500 millibar height low level jets is going to be really diving in. We're going to be looking at a pretty significant trough that's going to be, the further it's able to dig, the more amplified it's going to be, and actually tries to turn negatively tilted again by the time we get in, say, a week time frame from now, from next Saturday. And that could be setting the stage for a more significant severe weather into the middle of the country, into the portions of the plains, back into Texas again. And take a look at the overall supercell composite index. By then, yeah, we could be looking at some more heavier supercells forming over portions of Texas, going into Oklahoma, into Kansas, going to in Nebraska, getting all the way back up into the Dakotas again, where that ridge of high pressure is going to be dominating. So you got much colder conditions to the northeast, and then you got much colder conditions off the west. And then eventually the warm up is going to be taking place, trailing behind this front. So there's a lot of moving parts with the weather as it continues to be very wild. But underneath that, there's the severe setup. By the time we get it, say a week from now, we could be looking at a more significant severe threat on the table for a good chunk of the Central Plains. So we're definitely going to be having to look out for that. But even for the next 6 days, we've got all that severe weather that's happening in portions of the Southeast for today and tomorrow. For Sunday, we get a little bit of a lull on Monday, but back more possible severe weather as we go into your Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday timeframe. And then we got that more significant trough that's going to be setting up over the midsection of the country again, bringing a more amplified, by then probably more amplified severe weather by the time we get into Friday into Saturday, and all these brown shaded areas for as we begin next weekend time frame. But look at the snow. I mean, this is a pretty impressive snow picture for the next 7 days, with all that heavier snow will be entering the portions of the Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley, into the Mid-Atlantic, and to the Northeast here, with some pretty significant totals. But even out west too, we got all that snow going to be flying into the Cascades and the Intermountain West, back into portions of Montana, back into Wyoming, as well as in the Four Corners region, getting into the Rocky Mountains here. So we got more, heavier snow is going to be on the table as a more amplified view. With all that heavier snow to the north, we've got all that severe weather to the south. So there's definitely no let up in sight. And if we expand the view and take a look at the North American view on the overall rain setup, like I mentioned, there's going to be that weakening typhoon way out in China right now, but that's going to be surging and kind of arcing itself back over to the Bering Strait, and that's going to be sending relentless amount of precipitation off the Pacific Northwest, getting into the Northern California. So we could be looking at some really healthy totals of several inches, if not more than that, 4 to 6 inches over the next 7 days right off the coastline here, especially as we get into Northern California. But as these systems set up in the midsection of the country, we could be looking at several inches of rain too for the Central Plains, as well as into Texas. And along that boundary there, right now, we're going to have more amplified severe weather into the portions of the Southeast with some more heavier rain for them. But look at all the rain and the precipitation starting to develop out there in the Caribbean, with well above average precipitation anomalies for portions of Jamaica. This goes through portions of, say, the Turks and Caicos. These amounts could be looking at 8 to 10 inches of rain over the next 7 days. And we're actually getting to that time of year now where even some of the models are trying to indicate, when you see these precipitation kind of congeal together for an extended period of time, hey, it's not out of the question these could try to spin up even a mini subtropical storm as we get into next week. So that even can't be ruled out, as well as we're getting closer to hurricane season, which basically starts June 1st, but they'll actually start putting out advisories by the time we get into the middle of the May. So it's not out of the question we could be having a little mini subtropical feature try to come out of all this activity out here into the Caribbean as it continues to lift off. I think most of it's going to be remaining offshore if it does get named. But either way, we could be looking at some very heavy rain extending out portions of the Caribbean that will extend into portions of the Turks and Caicos area with all that heavier rain. So if you got plans down there, definitely be on the lookout for some heavier rain that's going to be on the table moving that way. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. I know it's a lot to cover this morning, so I appreciate you guys watching. I'll keep you well ahead of the storm, and stay with me where I protect you before and after the storm.